Okay, let's make a fretboard. Fretboards take patience, definite precision, and at least one specialized tool. You can literally make a fretboard out of anything that you want, although some materials are better than others. Fender used to make fretboards out of a solid piece of, they actually didn't make a fretboard, they made the neck and the fretboard, it was all one solid piece of maple. You can also cut fretboards from man-made materials like acrylic and various other materials. Now, like I said, some of those materials are not going to function as well as others, and that's the thing that you have to figure out. There's also color variations that you might want to deal with when you're thinking about making a fretboard. How you color the guitar and the color of wood that you want to mix in with that from the fretboard perspective, that's important, as well as the color of the frets that you're going to use. Right now there are some different frets that are available. They're just starting to be available in a multitude of colors. That's kind of a new thing. Traditionally they were made out of nickel, so they're kind of that silvery color, and you can also get gold frets, but that's a different topic. Some projects that I'm currently working on are the Asian ebony on the left, North American maple in the middle, which is the one we're going to look at today, and then a piece of Brazilian rosewood that's on the right, which I've not yet slotted. I'm kind of waiting for the right project on that one. When I'm going to make a fretboard, I'll take a piece of stock wood, like this 1x4 here of maple, and I'll cut it to the length that I want. Prior to cutting it to the length, I should mention that I will also plane down at least one of the two edges so that I have a perfectly straight edge with which I can cut the length and have it square, as well as cut the width like I'm doing right here with the table saw. And then the next step after cutting the width is I need to resaw, because it's currently too thick. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick. I want to have it down ultimately to 1/4 of an inch, so I need to split this in half, which is kind of a nice feature because you end up with two fretboards once you split this in half by resawing it. As you see, once the wood comes off the saw, we've split the bonds in the middle, and so the wood tends to bow for a little. I've found a way in the past to straighten that out by clamping it together really tightly for 3-4 days, and it'll end up pretty flat at that point, and I can then plane it down to the thickness that I want. Like I said earlier, that's about 1/4 of an inch. After it's been planed down, this is where I begin the real precision work of marking the lines where the frets are going to be placed. You don't have a whole lot of leeway here. You have to be pretty darn close. Yes, they've been making instruments for centuries, and you know that without the modern tools, you know, things weren't always exact. So there is a small amount of flexibility, but it's not a lot. It's a little over 1/2 millimeter. I think you can go up to about 0.8 millimeters before the human ear can pick up the sound difference. So I'll try to get as exact as I can. And, you know, surprisingly, you can do better than you think. You just have to be careful, and like you see here, it's high speed, but I'll actually measure twice. Measure it once, mark the line, and then I'll measure it again to make sure that I got the line where I wanted it to be. With that done, the next step is to score the lines. I use a straight edge to make sure that I don't go off of the line that I marked in pencil, because this is one area, you know, even the slightest slip, you could end up really screwing up your work, and then you end up having to start over. The reason I score the lines is because when I use the fret saw later, it gives a track that the saw will want to follow. Without that scored line, again, you could end up screwing up your work really quickly, and then you need that other piece of fretboard. You got to start over. When you cut the slots into the fretboard, I tend to cut them to a depth of about 2 to 2.5 millimeters. which isn't a lot when you think about it. Millimeter's pretty small. Typically the depth of the fret tang is going to be less than that, but when you make the fretboard, you end up having to radius it, which means that you're putting a curve on it, and that shaves down both of the edges. So you need to have enough of the fret slot left over that the fret will fit in there. It will lock into place, and the tang will fit in. Obviously, you don't want the fret sitting up on the fretboard. So that's why I go to about that 2 to 2.5 millimeter depth. And with that final slot cut, I now have a fretboard that is ready to use on a neck, just like the one we see here. Thanks for watching.